Hello, Yinzers. Welcome in to another Steelers draft profile. Thanks so much for joining us on the Sick Podcast, Steelers Crazy. Make sure you find us on the Twitter at Sick Pod Steelers. Of course, hit that subscribe button as well. We got a great team over here at the Sick Podcast, and we're very fortunate to bring on one of our draft experts for a Pittsburgh Steelers draft profile breakdown. If you have missed any of these, we're taking some of the names that have been connected to the black and gold throughout this process and talking a little bit about them in detail with our draft expert. Today, we have a player that has been frequently mocked to the Steelers. We're going to talk about a position that might be priority one. Are you not entertained? That might be a little hint right there. Hopefully, we're always entertaining you here at the Sick Podcast Steelers. Crazy. Sammy, go ahead and run it.
Turn up your volume. Because you're about to listen to The Sick Podcast. Steelers Crazy.
Harris Smith shields. Flacco Polamalu takes it home. Super Bowl 43. Pittsburgh might be bound for that thanks to number 43.
The sickest Pittsburgh Steelers podcast.
Sports entertainment like no other. It's gonna be sick.
Our guest today you can find on X. Yes, it is X. I always forget about that. It'll always be Twitter to me, sort of like the Heinz Field Acrisure Stadium vibe right there. At Draft Vogel and at SickPod NFL Draft, always putting out fantastic content. It is John Vogel. John, what's going on in your neck of the woods?
Nashville, Tennessee, booming as always. Spring's in the air. Thank God we're about done with this cold down here, man. So ready to get some, nicer weather, and nicer weather always spells beginning of draft season too. So,
are you a country music guy?
No. I'm a metalcore guy. I know.
Metal. Who's the favorite?
Oh man, so I listen to a lot of Eminence. I listen to a lot of bands that nobody's ever heard of. So Currents is a band that I like a lot right now. Stuff like that.
I like it, breaking down undrafted free agents that guys are never going to hear of and taking the same route with the music landscape over there as well. All right, the guy we're talking about today is not going to be an undrafted free agent, that's for sure. This is, as I mentioned in the open here, somebody who has been frequently mocked to the Steelers. I think if you took a collection of every single mock draft that has been done by lowlifes like myself, all the way to the top of the totem pole to the John Vogels and the Daniel Jeremiahs of the world and the Mel Kipers, you're going to see Jackson Powers Johnson mocked a ton to the Pittsburgh Steelers at pick 20. They're completely devoid of a center right now. There's literally no center on the team. And once again, these are fluid. That could change by the time this has been posted. But John, let's just start with a general breakdown. Where do you see him? And we're talking about a center here, which, this position is not always highly coveted in the first round. Is 20 too high for a JPJ, or is he that good he could fit in that slot?
This is one thing that I've been talking with a lot of my people, across the league, trying to get a feel for, because he's such an interesting prospect with the size that he has and, some of the ability that he's shown on tape. He's 6'3", he's 334. That's incredible for a center that can move like he can. So there's good things there. Another thing too that we kind of talked about with centers, on the Sick Pod, our show talking about the draft, is centers typically have shorter arms. So the reason for that is if you think about the snap and just swinging your arm to get the ball to the quarterback, if you have a shorter arm, it's going to get there just a little bit faster. It might not sound like it's a big deal, but we're talking about a game in milliseconds sometimes where, if you have 0.1, 0.2 seconds, you can get the ball off outside and not, take a sack instead. It really does come down to that sometimes. So he's got, really good measurables. The one problem that he does have, and, this is what I've talked with a lot of teams consistently across the league, is his lower half. His lower body is not very well tuned. So he's got a great, huge upper body. I mean, you see this guy, if you see him from the waist up, you're going to think he's a bodybuilder. You're going to think he's just, this massive freak. He is. But when you get to his lower body, it's not really built yet. It's still pretty lean. There's not a lot there. And he struggles, with his technique and getting into things with his lower body. So, This is a guy that I think in college was able to use his upper body to dominate defenders and to win games, and to win those reps against guys because of the size that he had. When you get to the NFL, you're going up against guys that are more consistently going to match your strength. So that's that's going to be the question for him: is he strong enough in his lower half? The other thing too is he opted out of a lot of testing. The only things that he did was he did the vertical leap, he did the broad jump, and he did the bench press. Everything else he's opted out of. So anything agility wise, he's opted out of. And a lot of scouts kind of take the approach when you won't do that at either the combine or the pro day as you can't do it. So those are the questions that he still has. He decided not to answer in his process. He's going to when he takes his top 30 visits, hopefully. He won't do those particular testing drills, but they'll run through a series of workouts to make sure that he can move and do all those things they're going to ask him to. I personally wouldn't take him first round. I think that there's a lot more hype for him in the media than there is in the NFL. And it's just because of the lower body and knowing that, hey, if we get into, the second round, there's a really good chance we get a guy like Zach Frazier, like I'm trying to think. There's another center that's up there, not Bortolini.
Van Pran.
Huh?
Van Pran, Cedric Van Pran.
Yeah, Van Pran. That's it. Out of Georgia, he's a guy. That maybe even to the third round, you could get your hands on him. If I was going to go anywhere in the first round and I wanted to address center, if he's still on the board, I'm not sure he's there. I would look at Graham Barton out of Duke. And the reason for that is because Graham can play all 5 positions across the offensive line. If he plays my center, and let's say I could go get a veteran center or whatever to hold in the rep, he can back him up. But I could play him at any position on that offensive line. And to me, that would be much more valuable than taking a guy that is still a project in his lower frame and, is going to play center, maybe guard, so that would make more sense to me personally.
While we stay on the JPJ subject, I know one thing that isn't tangible, that is not immeasurable, is heart and grit and just the ability to be a dog out there, right? Is what they say these days. Coach Prime putting the D on the jerseys. I feel like that is a trait. Would you agree that JPJ is off the charts with?
Yeah, he's very physical. And that goes back to the point that, where we said this is a guy that dominated people in college, and he did it with his upper body. He did it throwing people around. So you want him to build up that lower frame. You want him to add a lot of muscle to that. Even when you see pictures of this guy, you just see him, right? You can see it looks like he's got chicken legs. Like I'm not trying to be mean or anything, but it's like that's what he looks like. Is literally compared to his upper frame, his lower frame is so skinny compared to the rest of it. And so that's something that you can build on, right? But that's going to take time. It's going to take work. It's going to take effort. You're going to need to make sure that you're quick enough as well. So maybe lose a little bit up off the top. Now that's why we're talking about a project here, right, Mike? Because that's a guy that he's got a lot of work to do before we can really fine tune him into the player that we want him to be.
We're hanging out here with John Vogel. Find him at SickPod NFL Draft and at Draft Vogel, of course, on X. Last question for you. Steelers fans had to have our eyes bleed the past couple of years watching Mason Cole and his errant snaps, right? This guy could not seem to hike the ball to the quarterback. Obviously, the most fundamental job for a center, naturally. Does Powers Johnson have sort of, a little bit of snapping issues? I've seen both sides. I have not broke down every snap, but I've seen some say, hey, there are times where he also struggles in that aspect.
Yes and no. So he went to the Senior Bowl and worked out for a couple of days and had some issues while he was at the Senior Bowl. That could be for a lot of different things. That could be, is there an adjustment that he had against the competition that he was facing where he felt like he had to be quicker and faster and, rush things? That's an adjustment that could be made once you get him comfortable and, in camp and all that. That's not a problem. I didn't see it nearly as much when I was watching him on tape throughout the year. The snap and everything seemed pretty clean, and he was pretty ready to go as soon as he got it off. Now, the one thing I will say about his snap and how he sets is a lot of times he comes off that snap and he's worried about getting up out of that stance because you're bent over, you're bent at your waist. It's an uncomfortable situation a lot of times. So you want to get your back straightened out. And a lot of times while he's getting his back straightened out, he gets his pad level too high. So that's one thing that you want to see him clean up a little bit. But I don't think necessarily the snap location is bad. I know that all I know is that at the Senior Bowl, there were some issues, during practice. But that could be a whole lot of different factors. It could be the competition he's up against and just trying to rush through things. Could be the quarterbacks that he's up against, like in a different way, made it look worse than it was. There's a lot of different things that could have factored into that.
For sure. All right. Thanks so much for the breakdown. That is John Vogel. Make sure you guys check out some more of our work here together as we're breaking down Steelers draft profiles. You heard it here first. John has Graham Barton ahead of Jackson Powers Johnson. All right. We'll see you guys next time.
And that's a wrap. Hope you don't miss us too much until next time. Follow the Sick Podcast Steelers Crazy on YouTube, Instagram, Facebook, Google Play, and Apple Podcasts.